So going into Golden, the transition into Golden is quite long. I believe it's roughly 45 seconds to a minute. Um, and Golden itself only has three mechanics. You have Exaflares, you have Akmorn, which is a shared tank buster that, like all other Akmorns in the game, hits an additional time every time there's a new Akmorn. And then there's Mornafa, which is just raid wide, a big raid wide that's shared. So I'm sorry. Well, I guess it's technically a stack. So yeah, you have Exaflares, a Tank Buster, and a stack. Like that's it. It's important that you plan your mitigation out. Um, and another big thing is this is obvious, but try not to die because when you go into Golden, you get this Phoenix buff, which doubles all the damage that you do. So if you lose that really early on, you're not going to be able to meet the DPS check, and you lose it by dying. So the fight always opens with Mornafa. So there are essentially 5 Mornafas that you need to worry about mitigating. The first one is like as soon as you go into the phase. I believe both Mornafa and Akmorn are magical damage. So you can see, like, I am going to be addling first GCD here. Because if I addle on first GCD here, then I can addle the first, third, and fifth Mornafa because it's a 90-second cooldown. We also have our Gunbreaker, Heart of Light, because they can do the same thing. They can hit 1, 3, and 5. And the Heart of Light lasts long enough to cover the Tank Buster as well. So the Mornafa is going to target a random person. So instead of kind of being in a loose spread and then going wherever Bahamut turns, we just always stacked just slightly north so that Bahamut would always turn north. So we're going to stack for Mornafa. And then there's going to be an Akmorn Tank Buster here. You can do this in a lot of different ways. What we did for what worked for us is we had both of our tanks stack for the first Akmorn and just use every cooldown they had. And then we invulned the second and third one, and then they stacked again for the fourth one and used every cooldown they had, and that worked for us. So there's the Akmorn going off. Raid is healed back up from Mornafa, and then Exaflares are going to be coming out. But like you can look at our DPS up here on the top. Like our ninja's doing 23k because the buff here is so strong that you just want to try to do everything you can to do the mechanics correctly and not die. So Exaflares are just like Exaflares in Midgard Stormer. They're just like the Exaflare style mechanic that was in Hades EX. There's nothing really different. The first Exaflare spawn roughly, I would say, 50 to 60% into the cast bar. And there's always 3 sets of 2 Exaflares. This is actually a really good pattern because the first 2 spawn right next to each other. Sometimes you can have like this one spawn and this one over here as the first set or whatever. But there's a handful of different ways that you can dodge Exaflares, and I would suggest looking into this yourself. But one way is you can stand on the front of the Exaflare, and after the marker goes away, run behind it. I like to go sideways into it. So we identify the Exaflares, we're kind of going to where they are, and then once they explode, you can just move in behind the Exaflare, okay? So on this pattern, we got a super easy pattern where the first 2 were together, the second pair was actually together on the opposite side, and the third pair was together in the middle, which is the easiest pattern that you can have. But you just want to, look into different ways to dodge Exaflare. Like I said, you can stand here, and then when the arrow goes away, you can run through. You can just go to the side and then run in. If the first and second Exaflares are next to each other, you can, be right next to the first arrow and be standing on the second arrow. When the first one disappears, you just move across. Alternatively, you can also just kind of stay near the middle. You don't have to run to the edge. I like going to the edge most of the time, but if I am going to be losing a lot of uptime, you can just kind of stay in the middle, and you can dodge in the middle as well. You just don't have the convenience of licking the arrows. You have to watch the explosions. So, for the second sequence here, this is the only sequence where the Tank Buster hits before the Raid Wide. In every other sequence, the Raid Wide stack hits first. But the second one is Akmorn first. So our warrior is going to be home ganging this, and everyone else is going to be stacking behind the boss. So after the Akmorn hits, the warrior is going to be stacking with the group for Mornafa, and then our tanks are going to be doing a tank swap here because our gunbreaker is going to be super bull lighting the third set. So you have Mornafa hit, and then you want to move him towards the middle and prepare for the next set of Exaflares. So again, Exaflare spawn roughly 60% into the cast bar. You can see them up north. So I'm hanging out more towards the middle because this is a really good pattern, easy to dodge again. Dodge through the Exaflares. And this is our third set. We're going to have Raid-wide Mornafa, and then we're going to have the Akmorn next. So my Addle comes up just before the Mornafa casts. So as soon as that hits, the Raid is going to kind of move a little bit, and then our Gunbreaker, you see, turns it towards the edge, and he's going to be super bull lighting this Akmorn. Both Akmorn and Mornafa have really long cast times. You know that they're coming, so don't panic and use things early. That's the worst thing you can do in this phase. Move the boss to the middle, and you get ready for the fourth set. So this is just a repeat. Exaflares are going to come out. You identify where they are. See, this is the pattern where, so this one was the 2-to-1 dodge. And you can see that I stopped my cast because it's not, to me, it's not worth this greed here. So once that arrow disappears, I'm moving over to make sure that I'm not dying to this. This is a really good spot to use 2 minutes and potions. If you potion during ads, then the potions kind of come up here. So we saved all of our 2-minute cooldowns for this big burst window. Raid-wide Mornafa. This is the last Akmorn. So this is number 4. So this is the last Akmorn that the tanks are going to be sharing with every cooldown that they have. You can see we actually got 2 melee limit break 3s in this phase. You generate a lot of limit break in this. And then after this, you have another set of Exaflares, and then after the Exaflares is the last Mornafa, and then it's the Enraged Mornafa, which I don't think we're going to see. I think we're going to see it or kill it right as these Exaflares are coming out. There's still a whole nother set. So again, that's if no one dies, the Enrage on that section is so lax. It's very, very simple. But if you don't kill it, then you have another set of Exaflares. You just dodge them the exact same as before. And then you have your fifth Mornafa. After that is the Enraged Mornafa, where everyone needs to spread, and then Golden Bahamut will just charge up a Mornafa, and it'll just start shooting it at random targets. If everyone is stacked, you'll die. You cannot mitigate that, so you just want to spread out for the fifth one. Ideally, you want your tanks to shirk the healers. I've heard some tanks go, well, that's not a big deal because, if I'm a warrior and I'm not an inner-release, the healer's going to do more damage. And that's true. However, Bahamut goes down his enmity list from top to bottom when he's choosing people for Mornafa. If you shirk the healers, then that moves them on top of the DPS. So then the tanks and healers die first, and the 4 DPS are alive the longest to help get, a closer to Enrage clear. So that's golden. Look into Exaflare yourself, find a good way to dodge it, collect your totems, and get your pretty screenshots.